So in this short video, I'm going to show you how to crochet a UK half treble stitch. It's really very simple, just like a treble crochet stitch. That's a UK treble crochet stitch. I'm just going to do a turning chain of 2 chains here. And just like with a treble crochet stitch, we're going to go yarn around the hook first. Now I'm going to put the hook under the first V so that both parts of the stitch are lying on top of my hook, and then I'm going to go yarn around the hook, catch the yarn and pull it through the stitch, and there I've got 3 loops on my hook. Now instead of going yarn around the hook and pulling through 2 of those loops like you would with a UK treble crochet stitch, I'm going to go yarn around the hook, holding on to the bottom of those loops with my left hand, and I'm going to slide it through all 3 loops, just pull it all the way through, and that is a half treble stitch. I'll show you that again. Yarn around the hook, into the stitch, catch the yarn and pull it through the stitch, 3 loops on my hook, yarn around the hook and pull it through all 3 loops, yarn around the hook, into the stitch, catch the yarn, 3 loops on my hook, yarn around the hook and pull through all 3 loops. And there I've made 3 UK half treble stitches. Now in America they call these stitches half double crochet stitches. So let me show you that again. Yarn around the hook, into the stitch, I'm taking my hook from the front to the back, always away, under the yarn, catch the yarn and pulling it through 3 loops on my hook, yarn around the hook and pulling it through all 3 loops on my hook, yarn around the hook, into the stitch, catch the yarn, pulling it through 3 loops on my hook. Now it's always best to try and go under the yarn and the hook goes away from you, and then try to slide as best as you can straight through all 3 loops. Yarn around the hook, and I'm gripping it with my left hand at the bottom of those 2 loops there, and then that makes it much easier for me to slide it through those 3 loops. And a half treble stitch is just that. It's about half the size of a treble crochet stitch. So let's make these stitches all the way to the end of the row, and we can have a look at the stitches. Okay, keep going to the end. Okay, this last stitch sometimes is a bit tricky to see, but it's always worth counting your stitches and making sure that you've got to the end. And if you miss that last stitch, you might end up making a triangle. So we're going to turn it to face us, and you can see that there's this V. So I'm going to put my hook underneath that V. It is being tricky. There we go, underneath both parts of the stitch, catching the yarn and pulling it through my 3 loops, yarn around the hook and pulling it through those 3 loops. And then we're just going to do 2 chains to turn, and then I can turn. Now interestingly, a half treble has got this V on the top, but if we turn it, it's also got a 3rd loop. Now sometimes patterns might tell you to go into that 3rd loop. So I'm going to go yarn around the hook, tilt it and just go pick up that 1 loop and make a half treble. So I'm going to show you that again. Yarn around the hook, into that loop at the back, catch the yarn and pull it through, pull through the 3 loops. Let me do a few more stitches and then I'll show you on the front, on the right side of the work, how your stitches will look. It's just an interesting feature, design feature, or an interesting effect that a pattern might want you to have. Okay, so that's how the back looks, and then let's turn it to the front, and you can see what looks like almost knitted stitches. I turn it, can you see? And so that creates a different kind of effect with a half treble crochet stitch. But most patterns will just say half treble, or the abbreviation for half treble is HTR, and that will just, if it just says HTR, you can just assume you go under both parts of the stitch and you just carry on following the pattern. So that's how you do a half treble crochet stitch.